Hello, great souls. Welcome to our Living Yoga Satsang reflections on Autobiography of a Yogi. So we are looking at chapter 25 this week, Brother Ananta and Sister Nalini. Let's begin together with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and Paramhansa Yogananda ji, saints of all religions, friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow to you all. Bless our time together. Help us to receive the gifts and treasures that this sacred text offers us as we study it. Guide us now and always to feel thy living presence within us, thy divine radiance as our own inner light. And may we share this light freely with all. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay, so good to be with you and be with this wonderful book, Autobiography of a Yogi. So in chapter 25, Yogananda talks about his brother Ananta, who's really played a significant role in his life. Ananta is the eldest brother, and in an Indian family, really respected in a similar fashion to the father. He's considered a head of the household and just deeply respected by his siblings. So Yogananda, as a younger brother, he was not only, I'm trying to think of the word to say this, Ananta kept thwarting Yogananda's spiritual aspirations, and he teased him often and challenged him. They didn't have an easy relationship. But nevertheless, he had great respect for him. And then in an earlier chapter, if you've been following along or if you've read Autobiography, there's a wonderful chapter, Two Penniless Boys in Vrindavan, where Ananta, his brother, challenges him very strongly with an impossible task and basically testing the divine to say, well, you know, you say that the divine will take care of you. I want you to prove it to me. And there's a really beautiful story, if you haven't read it, a miraculous story of how it happens, right? So all these things that couldn't possibly happen, in fact, happen. And and as a result of that, Ananta becomes a disciple of Yogananda. So very, you know, the eldest brother, the one you would be looking up to, who would be the guide, says, you know, I'm convinced you have access to a wealth and a treasure that I don't. And it's been proven to me today that this is real. So please initiate me into Kriya Yoga and I will be your disciple. So that's really a beautiful turnabout in their relationship that happens. So in this chapter, it begins with Yogananda in meditation receiving a divine message about his brother. The message says, Ananta cannot live. The sands of his karma for this life have run out. Yogananda goes on to say, these inexorable words reached my inner consciousness as I sat one morning in deep meditation. Shortly after, I entered the Swami order. So in the previous chapter, we were talking about Yogananda taking the formal vows of a Swami. And shortly after that, in meditation one morning, he receives this message. He then went to visit his brother. And he says that the solemn, well, let's see, how does he say this? He went to visit his brother, and his brother became ill, and he nursed him. He took loving care of him. And then he said that the solemn pronouncement of that message he received in meditation had filled his heart with grief. So he hears this message, he goes to visit his brother becomes ill, he's nursing him. The grief that he's feeling for this potential loss of his brother causes him to leave. And he goes on a trip against, how did he word it here? He said, uncomprehending criticism from relatives. So he makes a decision to leave. He's leaving because he knows his brother's going to die. No one else has that awareness, apparently. But he knows he can't bear to be there when his brother leaves his body, which is what he says, is that he can't stand that. So he leaves against criticism from his relatives. And he goes to China and to Burma, to China and Japan. And something I want to touch on here that Yogananda spoke of, and I don't know if it's later in this book that he talks about this or in other talks I've heard, or other books that he's written, where he has said, I think it might be later in this book, that he said, for people who were very, very close to him, he purposefully, if he knew that their death would be difficult for him, he would purposefully not be there. So when he had moved to the United States and he lived in Southern California in the organization of Self-Realization Fellowship, that the organization he began was sharing these teachings, his foremost female disciple, Sister Gitamata, when she was dying, he went for a drive the day that she died. He knew she was dying that day. And he was heartbroken about it, but he purposefully wasn't there. Now, one of the reasons I've heard him say that he wasn't there is that his desire for, I don't know if desire is the right word, but it might be. It's tricky when you talk about a master because they're known as having like desireless desires. They're free of ego. As Asha has often said, and I've heard others say about this level of consciousness in terms of a master, you have to be one to know one, to really understand one. So the subtlety of this, it's difficult to speak about, I think is what I'm saying. But so I will simply relay what I have heard, which is that he did not want to tussle with God's will. So when it was divine will that something should happen, like the loss of a loved one, and that divine timing had been pronounced, he knew not to be there because his own love of that person and the grief that he would feel in losing them in physical form could energetically conflict with divine will. I think that's the easiest way to say it. It's remarkable to me to hear about that because, and again, I'll go back to something Asha has said, it's easy to think that the masters don't feel, right? Because they're one with everything that is, they live in omnipresence, they know everything, they live in a state of inner communion and unity. So it's very easy to imagine that they're beyond human reality, but they're not. They're not beyond it. They come in to a human form, their divine, fully free soul takes on a human body and moves through that physical incarnation, and they experience many of the same experiences we do. They do experience it from an exalted state, an exalted awareness that makes it much easier to manage, much easier. It's easier. Well, Sai Ganesh gave a beautiful talk yesterday in Sunday service, and he was reflecting on something that Swami Kriyananda said about tests and challenges in life. And the sentence that really stood out to Sai Ganesh was that Swami Kriyananda faced many challenges in the material realm. And what he said about them is that he found, although he faced them, that he faced them with a sense of ease because he found them all worthwhile. Meaning there was purpose to everything that was happening. And this is very much a deep yoga practice, is to see that the things that are unfolding in life have value and meaning and purpose. And this is part of our journey of a practice aligning our will with divine will. Excuse me. So that's what the masters are are always and only doing. They're only following the divine will. There is a few experiences in Autobiography where it's talked about this. The word that comes to mind for me in the moment is tussle. It's a little bit of a tussle. It's not going against divine will, but there's a sense of asserting something. So early on in the book, when Yogananda meets Sri Yukteswar as his guru, and he asks him to promise me that you will give me God realization. And he says, in his own words, he might have used the word tussle, but there was a little bit of energetic tussle because a master's words must manifest. They live in truth, and the power of their words, of their proclamations, their declarations, they will happen. It's one of the distinctions of a master, that what they say transpires. So they're very careful to make declarations, to promise something. And Yogananda knew that, so he wanted Sri Yukteswar to promise it, because he knew if he promised it, it would happen, this would come about. So this idea of not wanting to thwart the divine will, right? And again, there's aspects of this that I can only relay the information. I can't say that I fully grasp the distinctions all the time. But the way that it relates to our journey is that the masters experience grief. They are in these human bodies. They do love. They do form beautiful, tender friendships, companionships, relationships that it is difficult to let them go. And early on in Autobiography, when Yogananda was 11, he lost his mother. It was extremely difficult for him. He was completely grief-stricken and writes about that. So there's these different times in his life that, as for all of us, our life is touched by death, and it's not an easy thing, even when we know the truth of unity and oneness. So Yogananda leaves, and he's really just waiting for his brother to leave his body. He goes on this trip. He said when he gets to China, his heart was too heavy for sightseeing. So it really had only one purpose. And as he tells the story, you have the sense, not only from his family, but even those with him, there were a few people with him on the trip, others don't really understand what he understands. They think he's taking a sightseeing tour, that he's just going away on vacation. He's living in a much deeper reality of what's happening. And so then they get to a point, I think it was in Shanghai, where he is taken to some little boutiques, some little shops to buy some gifts, and he buys some things for Sri Yukteswar, some things for his family, and then he picks out an item for his brother. And he said that as soon as the salesman handed it to him, he dropped it on the floor and cried out, right? I have bought this for my dear dead brother. And he had a profound realization that Ananta was leaving his body at exactly that moment. He said that a clear realization swept over me that his soul was just being freed in the infinite, and then said that the souvenir was broken in a symbolic way. And he wrote on the souvenir, "For my beloved Ananta, now gone." Just so touching to me that he offers for us the experience of how to make space within ourselves for the reality of grief and not lose connection with the divine. Very recently, I was talking with a friend, I would say in the springtime, that they had lost someone very dear in their life, and they were really struggling with spiritually struggling, feeling the questions that I've seen come up with death. I have felt them around the loss of loved ones, where it just doesn't seem to make sense, because I can't see the divine will. I don't understand it. All I'm aware of is this profound loss of physical form of a loved one. And now that form is gone. And even if they're free and I have a sense of them being okay, it's not easy to be without them. And so this friend was saying to me very sincerely, why is it set up this way, basically, that you could love someone so dearly and completely and then, they be taken away? Why do we have death? It's really one of the greatest mysteries of our human journey. And what I have found, I'll go back to Sai Ganesh's talk yesterday, is that there's certain questions that can help me move through an experience, and certain questions that keep me just kind of not going anywhere in the experience. So when Sai Ganesh was quoting Swami Kriyananda to say that Swami had the ability to sense and see, and I can imagine sometimes know, the purpose and meaning of things. But he certainly lived in the understanding and the depth of his being that everything that came to him, everything that happened, had meaning and value and purpose. And he lived in that understanding. And so it removed from him a sense of suffering and the difficulties that he faced. He was challenged many times, right? Physically challenged with his health, financially challenged with things that happened. Really not an easy life at times. But he met them with an exalted state of awareness. And so for myself, when I'm facing a challenge, part of what I'm wanting to do, and I've learned to do, it's a practice, an ongoing practice, with the teachings of yoga, is to ask questions that help me experience or move toward an exalted state. So the very first thing that I will often do is, in a prayer, I'll ask to see the blessings that are happening within this experience. So if I'm not feeling them, right? If I'm heartbroken, feeling grief, feeling confused about something, the timing of something isn't making any sense to me, I will affirm what I believe to be true, is that the divine will, I've dedicated my life, and that's a daily practice as well, giving my life to the divine, and then asking for God and the gurus to guide me through the help of teachers, through the help of teachings. I don't do it alone. I often say that. I couldn't do it alone. So I need that support. All that being said, part of what I'm needing is a clarity of understanding. So I will use this example because it comes to mind as I'm talking about it. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago that our dear kitty Surya passed away. And I had mentioned that a dear friend Uma had passed away shortly before that. So two big losses this summer. I've really felt them. It's really been something human. What can I say? Just really missing them. So when Surya passed, I was praying right after his passing. James and I actually did an astral ascension for him, very sweet, in our community, and I may have talked about this. So many people were touched by Surya's life. He touched many, and so I'm grateful that there's been a community connection. For me, it's been very healing as well. I'm not the only one who was touched by him. And so I was praying the day after, I think it was the day after he had passed, and I was crying. I was praying and crying and singing some chants and just asking for a sense of, I don't remember the exact words I asked, but I know what I was asking is what I'm talking about here, which is how to move through this experience in a way that I stay connected to a sense of blessing and grace. Because I was feeling so much loss, and it's just very easy, what I know I don't want to do when I'm challenged, which is tempting to do, which is close the heart, right? Come closed off, right? Okay, well, forget love, forget being in relationship with anyone. It's just going to end in pain. I don't want to do that. I know that's not the answer. But it can naturally come up, like my other friend who I was talking to in the spring. I mean, she was really in a crisis of faith, of why bother, what's the point? And ultimately those questions, if they're offered to the divine and they're held in a spiritual context, they can actually break us open to profound realizations. So it's okay to ask those questions. It's actually part of the spiritual journey to ask, what is the point of all this? And heartbreak sometimes brings that question up in a very deep way, because actually in the deepest level we need to know the answer. We're not kind of casually pondering what's it all about. We're actually with anguish saying, what is this all about? There's a statement in our Sunday service, the Festival of Light, that Swami Kriyananda said was divinely given to him. It's really a very holy, sacred ceremony we do every Sunday. Beautiful story, allegory of a bird that represents the soul's journey. And there are all these different passages about the soul's journey of awakening. And one of them is, for what end are we made? You know, what are we doing here? For what is the purpose? So death can bring that up. And it can seem like a razor's edge, that we can go into a place of despondency and there is no purpose and why bother? Or we can go toward a place of expansive exploration and receptivity to that which is beyond our conscious mind understanding. But we can feel a flow of grace holding us and guiding us. A few chapters earlier, when we do not go to Kashmir, was the chapter Yogananda talks about this whole experience where he was thwarted at every turn and it made no sense to him at all. And later, he was given the understanding, because he became very, very ill, and Sri Yukteswar revealed to him, this is why. Can you see now why I was thwarting your trip? Where it just seemed like, why are things going against me? So it's a beautiful example of how this can happen. The conscious mind, it makes no sense. It just seems like everything's wrong and it shouldn't be happening. And then, in this case, something else is revealed that explains why it's happening. So with death, in the yoga teachings, the soul comes into physical form and leaves physical form at a divine timing. And I've talked about this earlier in chapters. So the principle I'm focusing on here, and I'll come back to my story so I don't leave you hanging with that. So when I was praying for guidance around that, really quite a profound answer came in that moment, which was, I'll just say what the answer was. So what I felt from Yogananda, I felt a response to me saying, I was loving you through Surya. That was me loving you through his eyes, through his little body, right? He was such a sweet little companion of mine. And I felt the truth of it. And in one level, I can say I know that to be true of God and the masters. It's the teachings that they are within everything in us. And there's a term we use in Ananda about service, that it's God serving God. That, you are God. The God in me is serving the God in you. It's really a divine truth. So I know that to be true, and yet it was profoundly personal and comforting and beautiful and surprising. I wasn't expecting to hear that, and I could feel a profound wave of comfort in it, still missing my little kitty friend, but I could feel, and then I felt also within that a guidance to that all the memories I have of time together with Surya out on the green, we spent a lot of time together and a lot of spiritual time. I would read, he'd sit near me, and so I could feel from Yogananda saying to me, see me there when you remember. And so just kind of saying to me, don't stop remembering and don't only look back on those experiences with sadness, like, oh, that's gone now, but remember it with a fuller, richer understanding that I was with you the whole time. I was in Surya, I was next to you. Like, this is the truth of omnipresence of God, that the conscious mind, it's difficult to articulate, but we can feel it. We can feel the truth of it. So I felt very comfort in that moment. I've returned to it many times. I still am walking the human journey of missing my little companion. And so I have moments where and I pray for him. And this is part of what yoga offers to help me lift my consciousness, to say, well, that soul is continuing his journey, and I can help him. I can help him. I can take that love and let it be a gift, rather than be something that I'm diminished by, that the experience of life has left me smaller rather than greater. And that's the blessing of yoga, is that we expand. Self-realization is an expansion of who we are. We use these tools and these practices, we're given these stories to help us understand that it's not an either-or experience. I'm either in a human reality, a conscious reality, or I'm in super consciousness. It is actually an integration of both. And we have let's see, how would I say this? We get to experience a great deal of that long before we're fully self-realized. So we don't have to wait, is my point. That, I don't have to wait until I have the full level of realization of Yogananda or Jesus or Sri Yukteswar or Buddha. Long before that, right? Every day there's an opportunity to touch a little bit more soul expansion and begin to rely with greater confidence on this deeper sacred reality that's ever present, and as we invite it, guiding our lives. So Yogananda tells these stories. There's later in the story, I'll be wrapping up with this, we'll come back to it next week, but when he says, my brother has died, right? There's a man who's with him who's saying to him, why, and he starts crying. He said, well, why cry now? Why don't you wait until you know? He knew, right? And then when they get home, his younger brother Vishnu meets him, and before he can speak, Yogananda says to him, I know that Ananta is gone. And Vishnu says, yes. And he says, tell me when he died. It was exactly that moment. And the other man was stunned, right? Like, wow. And he says a little joke about mental telepathy, but the point here is, Yogananda stayed centered and true he lives in a deeper reality, he lived in a deeper reality, and he's showing us what that looks like and how to navigate our journey from a deeper reality that doesn't dismiss the human experience, but helps us move through it in an empowered way, expanded way, rather than a diminished way. So I think that's where we'll end our conversation on this today. And wishing you a beautiful week. And I guess my invitation to you is to just be noticing in your life those things that help you lift your consciousness and, ask the question, right? Ask the question for help, and then notice as it unfolds for you what happens. Okay, great souls. Thanks for joining me today. Great to be with you. Wishing you a beautiful day and a beautiful